There we go. Let me know if Harmony, shoot me a text to make sure that we are up and running. We are live. Let me turn my volume on my phone off, and I'm hoping that this works. Can you guys hear me okay now? I want to wait till yeah, I'm good to go. Harmony, thank you. Sorry about that, guys. Let me dive in. I'm on my 4 or 5 minutes behind schedule. You know, abortion has been in the news again, and what's been said is it's both sad but not surprising. You know, this last week I was perusing the internet and some news articles, and I read 2 articles in particular highlighting the killing of innocent preborn human beings. So today I'm going to go through each of these articles, at least briefly. I wish I had more time to go through one of them in particular in more depth, but in the process of just briefly going through these, I'm going to offer a response to some of the issues raised while pointing out the faulty thinking that permeates much of our culture. So if you guys are tuning in live right now, this is To The Point. I'm Jon Noyes, and I want you to remember to comment not only with whether or not you can hear me, because now I hope you can. Oh, from Denmark, Bo. Holy smokes. You're proving my point here. This is why I love for you guys to comment while I'm talking here. We're going to do about 10 to 15 minutes of just kind of a monologue, but then I'm going to take some questions and wrestle with you guys through whatever really issue that you want for maybe 30 minutes to 45 minutes. So make sure while I'm talking, add your comments into the chat, and I'd love to hear what you're thinking and maybe get to some of your questions. So while you're doing that, add those into them, and at the end, I will review the chat. The first article that comes to us, it does so from Fox News, and it's titled, if you guys want to Google it, or Harmony will probably put it in the link. It's called "Former Stripper." I love the title. They catch our eye, right? The former stripper for Congress says climate energy partially prompted decision to get an abortion. Now that's the title, and the article it's obviously meant to get our attention. But when we pass through that, we read about Alexandra Hunt. She's a candidate for the U.S. House of Representatives who has a past from which she's not hiding. And in fact, she says that she believes her willingness to embrace her history that's checkered is actually helping her campaign. And I quote her in the article. She says, "My decision to not be ashamed of how I afforded to go to college," and just to be clear, she was a stripper in college, is resonating with voters, is what she says. She says that people are sick of being shamed for perfectly legitimate choices they've made in their lives. Now, Miss Hunt, like I said, she was a stripper in college who had an abortion at the age of 18. And I want to be clear about something here, okay? Her past does not and should not preclude her from running for or holding an elected office. And I don't want to get lost on that rabbit trail, because I think oftentimes our discussions on this type of issue, we go on a rabbit trail and we miss the forest, the trees through the forest. You know what, Miss Hunt, she may even have a point, I think. You know, people are looking for authenticity, and many of us are weary of career politicians. After all, isn't one of the things that got President Trump elected this very thing, something different with a storied and even checkered past? You know, but this isn't the point, though. The point here on To The Point is that she was isn't that she was a stripper, and I'm not concerned with that. What is concerning is her view of abortion and her low view ultimately of human life. In a video that they quote in the article, she says this: "When I was 18, I was part of the 2% of people who can get pregnant on birth control, and I found out I was pregnant. And I decided that I was not ready to bring a child into this world, and I decided to get an abortion." You know, she went on to say that the world was not in a state I wanted to bring a child into. Ms. Hunt continues to say, my generation faces a lack of jobs, a lack of living wages, a housing crisis, an affordable housing crisis, a student debt crisis, a climate emergency. And that's where the article gets its title. That's actually the only place that climate emergencies mentioned in the article. But anyway, she goes on: climate emergency, a prison industrial complex, and the list goes on. And I wanted to offer my child better, is what Miss Hunt says. So what was that better alternative? To kill her baby. That's what the better alternative was. The congressional candidate goes on to say other women who make a different choice should be respected for their choice, as long as it was actually a choice, not coerced by the government. Now, here's where I think kind of the rubber meets the road, for me at least. There's two questions that come to my mind, and they probably are in your mind right now as well. First, what does she mean by coerced by the government? That's an interesting statement. And it's a statement, also a thought that runs through the next article we're going to go through in a second. I want to know, does Ms. Hunt suggest that any law against abortion or limiting a woman's ability to obtain an abortion it amounts to government coercion of women to have babies? Because if that's what she means, this is absurd on its face. As if the government is actually forcing pregnancy and then birth on women through limiting a woman's access to abortion. That you can't draw that parallel. You can't connect those dots. And actually, I'd argue it's ultimately degrading the women if we think about it, because it's making women out to have no freedom of will and ultimately a tool of the state. And ultimately, her view of them being coerced by the government is a low view of not just babies, but of women in general. Second, though, and this is where we're going to spend most of our time, what's the choice that's being made? This is the fundamental question that always needs to be answered. When someone says that they're pro-choice, what exactly does that mean? What's the choice that they're making? And I'll tell you what it is. It's the choice to take the life of an innocent human being. It's murder. There's no sideways about it. More on that in a minute. Miss Hunt supports her campaign via an online channel, and then she sells shirts. And I'm not going to say the sayings on the shirts. You can look them up if you want. They're crass, relating to her former profession. But earlier said that my issue wasn't with Miss Hunt's past, and it's not with how she's running her campaign, or even that she has a campaign. I think one of the beautiful things about this country is that anybody can rise to the level of leadership. At least that's the way it should be. And also, as Christians, friends, let's remember that all of us, according to the standard that we're called to live by, have a sketchy past. Not one of us in the eyes of God is any more holy than Miss Hunt. We should all be able to recognize that. However, when someone lifts up their sin and they lift it up as something to be celebrated, well, that's not something we should ever support. When people are bragging about their sin, when they go on to live in their sin, the scriptures are clear that that's not where we go. So to have a checkered past is nothing to be ashamed of. I have a checkered past. So do you, maybe. We all have a checkered past, but there's a difference between not being ashamed of something and then celebrating it. They're not the same. You can have no shame, but we don't lift it up to emulate or something that we're proud of. And I think that there's actually, to be honest with you, as I read and I'm thinking about this article, I think that there's something admirable about Miss Hunt's honesty. But unfortunately, anything that's admirable is quickly and overwhelmingly diminished by her dismissive attitude towards the taking of innocent human life. Keep in mind, this is a candidate for the U.S. House of Representatives. In this short article, in her brief statement, we see how far we as a culture have slidden towards moral corruption. And this actually, I'm going to jump to the next article here. And this one's from the slate.com. It's really long, and I think it's almost 3,000 words. But if you have a chance to go read it, I think you should. The title of it from slate.com is "The Most Unexpected Consequence of the Texas Abortion Ban." And the author discusses what she thinks is an unexpected effect of Texas Senate Bill 8. It's known as the Texas Heartbeat Act. And if you guys have been following the news over the last couple months, you would have seen that it's passed in Texas, and it's now illegal to offer abortive services to a woman who is carrying a baby that has a detectable heartbeat. So as that heart tissue develops and starts to beat, it is no longer permissible to take the life of that baby. The author of this article, she sums up the bill as, and these are her words: the law prohibits abortion using the threat of now pay attention to these words, guys, okay, because I think they're important, and the rhetoric is unreal as we go through it. I'm going to point some of this stuff out. Let me start at the beginning of that quote, if you can. Let's see here. The law prohibits abortions using the threat of expensive lawsuits brought by private bounty hunters. Keep that in mind, private bounty hunters, if they occur after the onset of fetal cardiac activity, which usually appears around 4 weeks after conception in what health professionals call the 6th week of pregnancy. The unexpected consequence. Well, let's jump up to the one of the statements. She used. I'm going to try to scroll up here in my quote. She said, they're private bounty hunters. Now, what's a bounty hunter do? It goes after something and seeking to apprehend it. I can't think of a better word to describe people who perform abortions. It's just interesting how there's been a flip of the script here. The script is on its head. Where now we're talking about people who are going on to defend preborn human babies as bounty hunters because they're pursuing justice for the fetus, for the baby. Anyways, what's the unexpected consequence of the bill, according to the author? A distorted and rushed decision-making process. The article says, and I quote, in other words, the restrictive nature of the law does more than hamper a patient's access to abortion. It distorts her decision-making process. The author goes on to paint a picture of, and again, these are quotes used by her in her article, a frantic women spiraling into despair, filled with anxiety over having to rush to make a decision about obtaining an abortion before it's, quote, too late. Women who are already terrified. This is a quote from the article: women who are already terrified that they'll be forced to carry an unwanted pregnancy. She goes on to say that abortion services, this quote is really telling, abortion service offices trying to schedule every patient for a visit on the same day she calls, lest that patient lose a single valuable day in the narrow window of care. And let's be clear, by care, she means abortion. With every paragraph, we see how morally confused many have become. The suffering abortion. This is another quote: the suffering abortion providers are witnessing in Texas points to a looming domestic human rights crisis on the horizon, a rapid disintegration of the reproductive health care infrastructure that has saved the lives of countless patients and dramatically improved the physical, mental, and economic outlooks of an entire generation of women in the decades since Roe v. Wade was decided. Guys, I have a great deal of compassion for the women mentioned in this article. I can understand they're being scared and concerned. I can understand why they'd feel anxiety, but let's keep in mind what we're talking about here. These women are seeking to take the life of an innocent human being. Shouldn't compassion also be extended to the unborn child, regardless of how that human life came into existence? So he or she's still just that, an innocent human life. And don't all humans have the right to life, regardless of size, level of development, environment, and degree of dependency? I think so, and I think the argument can be convincingly made. Does the fact that a baby was conceived, and I quote, by accident or in a manner that's unplanned, validate the taking of that innocent baby's life? I don't think it does. I think maybe these women who are making these decisions should feel anxious about it. The article mentions, and I don't have it in my notes, so I can't quote it, but it mentions studies that have come across indicating that women rarely regret their abortion. Now, I looked into the studies. I found contradicting studies as well, and I've seen personally firsthand the effects abortion have had on families. I want to ask questions like, what of the rapid disintegration of the fetal healthcare infrastructure? What are the nearly 1,300 unborn babies who have been aborted just today by the time I'm done with our time together? The author here, she talks about the physical, mental, and economic outlooks of an entire generation of women. What of the 63 million human beings who've been burned alive and dismembered in the name of reproductive care? What have we come to as a people that these types of ideas have a serious place at the table of popular and political culture? This issue should break our hearts, and we should be more vocal, I think. What we're seeing here is the result of a culture that's come to accept as essential the destruction of preborn babies. Friends, this is idol worship at its max. This is the result of following nature and nature's law as opposed to God's law. And I've been digging into issues of biblical justice a lot lately. And here, right here before us, in two major publications, is a major cultural injustice. Not the limiting of abortion, but the fact that we would think it's a human right to take the life of an innocent human being in the most precious and safest place they should be, the mother's womb. We're talking about the targeting and destroying of a specific people group defined by stage of development. This gets us back to the heart of the issue. Given we all agree that the child may be in incredible inconvenience, even maybe the result of a tragic event. I agree with you that, or an incredible mistake. How do you think a civil society should treat innocent human beings that challenge our current way of life? Implicit in this question is another, actually. What is the unborn? And this is the question that we all need to keep on the front of our minds as we engage in conversation about these issues. What is the unborn? Modern embryology tells us that the unborn are unique human individual beings, and as such, they're not also shouldn't they be afforded the same opportunities we have? I mean, we've all been given so much. Shouldn't we at least give them the basics? The right to life? Of course they should. And then this is regardless of how they're conceived or what somebody thinks of them, even at the earliest stages of development. So don't be distracted here by the idea that the Texas heartbeat bill causes rush decisions. Instead, focus on what the decision is: the taking of the life of an innocent human being. Winston Churchill, and I have a couple quotes to end our time here. Winston Churchill said, "You measure the degree of a civilization of a society by how it treats its weakest members." Gandhi, he made the simple point when he said, "A nation's greatness is measured by how it treats its weakest members." The moral test of government is how that government treats those who are in the dawn of life, the children, those who are in the twilight of life, the elderly, those who are in the shadows of life, the sick, the needy, and the handicapped. That's Herbert Humphrey. Bonhoeffer said that the test of the morality of a society is what it does for its children. And then Jesus, of course, says, "I tell you the truth, whatever you do not do for the least of these, you do not do for me." Our culture, uh, led by our government, is failing the most fundamental of all tests: protecting the least of these. And that's indicated by these two articles, one from Fox News, one from slate.com. Now, now's time for I can skip through the questions and see what we got here. I'm going to start looking down because my computer's down here. There, my computer keeps This is such a bummer. It should be back. Text me back. Awesome. Yeah, my crazy mic. I might need to get a new microphone. We'll see. Um, when will all this stary? Is this natural ghee? I'm wondering if when will this stary? When will it stop? Well, when heaven and earth collide, when that thin space between heaven and earth becomes no space at all. Um, let's see here. Oh, when will it start? That was before I even started. Huh, that's funny. UK, holy smokes, Great Britain, you are here watching us. Nikki, it's so good to have you with us. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate you. And then the articles are listed below, so make sure you see them. Articles are a good way to start conversation. This is Justice, man. You're like always on here. I love it. Thank you so much for coming week after week. Articles are a good way to start a conversation with unbelievers and Christians. Just ask, what do you think about this? That's right. I mean, that's like Columbo, right? What do you mean by that? Especially if you can go to like Slate, for example. Slate.com is largely, it's um a liberal publication, politically liberal publication. It's a great place. If you've read it, the article, you could say, hey, did you see this article? I'm wondering what you thought about it. That's a good tip there, Justice. Nice work. Um, tough subject. Thanks for handling it with Christ's like careness. Claiming Christianity. Hey, what's up, Steve? Yeah, this is a huge issue for me, and I've taken kind of a break from it because I've got other really big issues like biblical justice and suicide. So I can only emotionally do so much, to be honest with you. But abortion is a huge issue. At the last church I was at, and Stephen, you know this. Stephen is the founder of Claiming Christianity. The great resource, by the way. Go to Claiming Christianity and watch all his stuff. He does Bible reviews. He does some teaching. Every once in a while, I'll hop on there with his guitar. I love to see that, and he'll sing some praise songs. But he's a really good friend. Yeah, at my last church, I ended up starting a ministry, or helping, I should say, start a ministry called No Longer Bound, where what we did is the moving into the issue, I believe that we have to have a full orbed response, right? It's one thing to go on YouTube like I just did and tear down an article and lift up righteousness. I think that's a good thing. We should be doing that. But when we respond to folks, what I learned standing the line, I used to go outside abortion places and argue with people and talk to people, and I would really plead with people to not have their abortion, men and women alike. um, I very quickly realized that there's a point that's being made that's I think uh, oftentimes valid, and that is like if I turn from the abortion, who's going to take care of me? And I was convicted very early on that I need personally, me. I know the services are out there in churches and everything, but I need personally to be able to answer that challenge in a very real way. So when I used to go to the mill here in town, and then also to the abortion mill in I used to go to one in Burbank, California, where they only performed abortions on Friday. That's it. That's all they did Fridays. I would go and I'd have a binder of stuff. I'd have a friend who's a family lawyer, and she's willing to do adoption work for free if you turn from having an abortion. I had people in our church volunteering, or at least try and get them to volunteer to help provide for this young lady. So if she turns, we could care for them up to 9 months after the baby is born. I have doctors who are willing to provide free health care, money from people that was donated in order to give them. I would offer to go with these young women to their homes, or the homes of their boyfriend or husband or whatever, to tell their family of what has happened, so they feel safe and secure. And then part of that also was I saw the hurt that was in the church from men and women who have wrestled with this choice, gone through with having an abortion, or multiple abortions for that matter, and have never dealt with that trauma. And there's something to be said for that. And so No Longer Bound is kind of something I brought to the church, where it was absolutely insane. we put it out there and said, hey, if you're in this audience, the church was maybe, I don't know, 1,200 people on a Sunday, throughout a couple services at the time. If you've had an abortion in your past, I want to let you know that there is now no condemnation in Christ Jesus. There's nothing that can separate you from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus. That's what the scriptures say. And because what I've seen is just through practical experiences, I feel like oftentimes we as Christians, we're good at highlighting the issue and winning the argument, but we're not going into the dark corners of our churches and telling these people that are hurting, that have past trauma, and telling them it's okay, bring that out into the light of the gospel. Just like when we shine it on the light of the gospel on the sidewalks outside these abortion clinics, we got to shine the light of the gospel on each other when we're hurting. And there's these deep-seated hurts from women and men who've had to wrestle with this decision and gone through it. So anyways, these women were actually coming out of the woodwork. And I mean, we actually had one woman who was on staff who had 3 abortions 30 years ago, and she never told a soul. She never told anybody. And she's been carrying that around with her for 30 years. And she was able to go through this process of healing. And anyways, we got to be careful how we deal with it, but it needs to be dealt with. And it has to be through Christ's love and compassion that leads the way. And I think that there is major inroads in this, I think, in this discussion right now. So anyways, thanks for tuning in, Stephen. It's good to hear from you. Let's see here. Bo, man, from Denmark. As a nation, we have a problem with Fox because not true stories and about, yeah, you know what? Fox News is where I I took that other article. You can read any other source and get the same information. I got Fox News because it's actually, to be honest with you, it's what my wife saw, and she sent it to me and said, you should talk about this. So I take my wife's advice. I'm a smart man. But yeah, I don't really go to any given news source and expect to get news anymore. I expect to get commentary, and I got to sift through it, and pull out, as Coco would say, I eat the meat and spit out the bones, and there's just a lot of bones right now. So, but this article, if you notice, I wasn't necessarily quoting the article. So I'm not quoting what the article says in any of this. I'm quoting what the people say. So often I quoted the doctors and the nurses and the clinicians from these Texas abortion facilities from the Slate article, and I was quoting the congressional candidate herself. So then at least you have their words. Let's see here. Justice, you said, I wonder what the atheist would say to this, since he doesn't believe in sin. Then what's wrong with killing a baby? Well, I think, to be honest with you, it depends on the atheist, Justice. This is actually an area where I find there's a lot more common ground than other areas with some naturalists, because I think a lot of people know that, well, one, we can appeal to science, right? So modern embryology is extremely clear. I didn't offer any quotes, but I mean, it is so clear. The major embryology textbooks in play right now at almost every top medical school in this country testifies to the fact that individual, unique human life starts at conception. And so now it's up to us to show, why is that, meaningful? Why is that valuable? What does that mean? And why it should not be killed. So I think you can find common ground arguing like that, or saying the things kind of that I said in the first 15, 20 minutes of the program. But yeah, when I was an atheist, I hate to say it, but I wasn't, this is the way I would have said it. I wasn't pro-choice. I was pro-abortion. So I would have been the rare, in my experience now, this side of Christianity, I would have been one of the rare examples or cases of an atheist really pressing into my worldview of naturalism and trying to live it out according to its consequences, where meaning and value are subjective. And if a baby or a fetus is in you, the words are, in my mind, are interchangeable, baby and fetus, but the fetus is hampering your happiness, and you have that ability, then you should be able to, without repercussion or consequence, take the life of that baby. That's what I would have said as an atheist. I used to have before I was a Christian, I was in a small group at a church. Man, these people, God bless them for their patience with me. But I remember arguing with one of my friends, Todd Royal, across his kitchen island. He lived in a little apartment in Studio City, California. And we'd be in his kitchen. Well, he'd be in his kitchen. I'd be on the other side of his kitchen across the peninsula. And we'd be yelling at each other. And I'd be arguing the case, my case, that I thought was valid for taking the life of an innocent human being. And he would be bringing these types of things to my front door and wrestling with them. So, anyways, that's, I think, what an atheist would say. I think that largely we can find common ground in this debate. And we just need to learn how to navigate certain arguments like autonomy, personal autonomy, right? Yeah, I can do what I want with my own body. This argument of happiness or somehow having a baby is going to inconvenience me. And I don't mean that pithily. I understand that having a baby, trust me, I have 4 daughters. I understand that having a baby is what it takes. It's oftentimes inconvenient. It's oftentimes extremely difficult. But is that inconvenience or the threat of that inconvenience oftentimes is that justification enough to take the life of an innocent human being? That's why we always have to get back to the question: what is the unborn? What exactly happens in the process of abortion? And this is actually one area I think that we need to push into even harder, especially in the use of graphic images and everything like that. We just actually had our final reality conference. We've been doing these reality student apologetics conferences, Chaos to Clarity. And one of the issues from the main stage we've been talking about is abortion. And Megan Ullman has been doing a fantastic job. And part of her presentation is she shows a 30-second video of abortion, like abortions. Like, what does it look like? Because many of us don't know. And so anyways, we can be using those to our benefit. Here, let's see here. Catherine, thank you so much for tuning in. I just wanted to know about IVF. This fertilization already happens in the tubes, and the remaining tubes have not been used, will destroy later. This is considered killing too. Yeah, this is a really hard. All of this is a really hard issue, Catherine. All of it is we have to be extremely compassionate when talking about this. But just because it's a hard issue doesn't change the facts that when an egg and a sperm meet and there's fertilization, whether it's inside the womb or outside, it's a new individual, unique human life. And that's that. So I have a number of friends who are wrestling with this decision right now. They've done IVF, and IVF is I mean, the potential is amazing. These technologies. I'm not anti reproductive technology. I think the medicine is, and the technology is insane. It's unbelievable. And I think it can be used as a great blessing to families, because oftentimes people feel really incomplete without having children or having a family. And I understand that. I think oftentimes there might be something to that. And so anyways, I understand the intricacies of it. But what happens is when people harvest, you harvest, 10 eggs and you fertilize them. Now you have 10 unique individual human beings waiting to be birthed. And oftentimes you don't understand the consequences of what that looks like. Now the doctors are going to pose it. Well, statistics are saying, you're going to lose X number of these, whether it be through implement, like when they go to implant it or the baby, or just through the way that the circumstances might have it in the laboratory. So maybe we should take more. But I think my general advice to couples who are thinking about IVF is, I would say your goal should only be to harvest, your goal should only be to fertilize as many eggs as you're willing to carry to term. And that's what you need to place on top of your doctor, no matter what your doctor says. We got to remember that doctors aren't God. they provide a service to us, and we need to remain firm in these things and say, this is my conviction. So if you're willing to have 5 children, I'd say you try to fertilize 5 eggs and you go from there. So that's my view. These are lives. My wife and I have been in discussion about what it looks like for us to adopt some of these babies who were conceived via IVF. And that's a huge thing right now, that you can get involved and actually make an impact. I want to be clear here too, guys, that if this is you, if you're watching this and this is your story, you've had an abortion, you've gone through IVF, and you have however many embryos, I want to let you know that there is no condemnation in Jesus. We all fall short of the glory of God. And I love you just because you're made in the image of God. We make mistakes, and that's what happens. And sometimes these mistakes, unfortunately, have really dire consequences, and this is one of them. I would encourage you, if you have had an abortion and you haven't ever talked about it with anybody, I'd encourage you to talk to your pastor, talk to a counselor or a friend, a husband, a wife, whatever it might be, if abortion has affected you in this way, because you need to release that needs to get off of you. And again, we need to take these issues out of the dark corners of our churches and shine the light of the gospel. And then actually you can probably go on and be used by God in somebody else's life, because statistics are telling us that abortions are happening in the church. So there's no sense. Let's not hide it. Let's speak from our experiences to help educate the church, use the story that God's given us, and in the process, you'll maybe save lives, whether it be through somebody who's wrestling with depression due to a previous abortion, or somebody who's wrestling with a pregnancy right now that they don't know what to do. So if that's you, get the help that's available to you. Talk to somebody, and if you're wrestling with having an abortion right now, I'd beg of you, just don't go through with that. There are solutions. I promise you, there are solutions out there that can help you. You can contact places like Save the Storks and stuff like that, who have great resources. Go to a pregnancy center in your town that's not Planned Parenthood, but a Christian one, and they can put you in touch with referral services for adoption. And there's lots of options out there. They're just not popular because, Planned Parenthood ultimately reigns supreme. They have the money, and they control the narrative sometimes. So anyways, but if this is you and you've already had an abortion, you've gone through with it, I just want to let you know that when we repent, I mean you're forgiven already, but we just repent, and we got to move through it. And maybe you need the counseling through your church, or just talk to somebody about it, because there is now no condemnation in Christ Jesus. So anyways, I want to make that clear. I hope that comes across. Right here, Justice, I have to admit, bounty hunter is a colorful term. You may want to use that one in your slide, on your side. Right? I mean, when I was reading this article, guys, go and read the article, the Slate article. The terminology that's being used it's ironic, because like bounty hunter, so what the picture is that there are these lawyers for hire that are seeking out victims of, and when I say victim, they're victimized by not being able to kill their unborn child. That's why they're a victim. They weren't able to have an abortion, so they're a victim of this new law, a victim of the state. And so now the state hires these bounty hunters to go sue them because they've procured an illegal abortion. Well, I mean, a bounty hunter is somebody who hunts somebody else out. I can't think of a better term for an abortion doctor, because they're on a seek and destroy mission, is what they are. They have a target. They know what that target is, and they destroy it. And that's a bounty hunter. So yeah, the terminology is really interesting. Usually I stay away from colorful rhetoric, guys. Just a point of kind of just point of, I guess, conversation. When you're talking to your friends, excuse me, my throat is like, I've been speaking a lot lately. Thank God. And hey, if you're watching and you want this topic brought to your church, I'd love to come to your church and spend a night or an entire weekend on offering training to this. And you can do that if you go to our website, str.org. You can click on the training tab and you can navigate down to my name, and it's a great way to book us. Harmony can also, I think she knows that there's a speaker request email that you could just send to Darcy. Ultimately, she's the one who handles all our bookings. So we're available, and we are traveling a ton right now. My schedule is bananas. So anyways, my throat is, it's not sick. It's actually not even sore. It's just rough. Let's see here. Let's keep going down. Stand the reason. Harmony, you are on it. This is an article that Harmony just linked to. Abortion is a type of discrimination. It's the worst kind, in fact, and here's why. This is a great article. Click on that link, guys, and you should actually just save that. I save like when I read an article that's really good that has a lot of fun facts in it, I always save it. Save that article. It's really great. Let's see here. Justice. I wish more Christians would comment on these kinds of articles whenever they can. Fox News allows comments most of the time. Yeah, it's really hard, Justice. Like what I'm assuming what you mean by comment isn't like what I'm doing here, offering a commentary about an article. It's really difficult to for me at least to get engaged in comment sections. It's one of the reasons, the same reason I don't go on social media very often as far as Facebook and stuff and get into discussions. It takes so much time. And then often what I find is I'll write out a clear, thoughtful, compassionate response, one that's backed by research and facts, and I spend some time doing it. And then I get the response is the equivalent of "nuh-uh," no, who says, or something like that. Or then I get called the bigot, an oppressor of women or whatever. And so I get met with conversation stoppers, even though I want to start a conversation. So what I do is I find my outlet for this stuff in personal interaction, whether that be on an airplane or driving in an Uber or just out and about at the store or whatnot. I'd much rather interact with somebody on a face-to-face level about these issues. I used to, and I don't do this anymore just because of time constraints, but I used to actually sit down at local Starbucks. And no lie, I had a little sign. It was like a teepee sign, like that. And it said, "Please join me." And in parens, "I'll buy." And so I had a sign. It was blue letters, "Please join me." I used to sit at the local Starbucks, and the sign would be like, "Please join me." And somebody always would come up. Many people throughout the day would come up, and I'd work until somebody, "Hey, what's that sign mean?" I'd say, "Hey, I'd love to buy you a cup of coffee." And I just talk to the person. Sometimes I'd be talking to a Christian. Sometimes I'd be talking to a non-Christian. I'd ask tons of questions, get to know somebody, even if it's just spending 10 or 15 or 20 minutes. Sometimes I can dig into these types of issues depending on what I'm working on. People are usually, "Hey, what are you working on?" And right now I'm working on biblical justice stuff. So, I'm working on social justice and trying to figure this out. And what's it look like to live in a just society? Do you have any thoughts on that? Have you ever thought about what justice is? Boom, and you're in a conversation. So anyways, yeah. So I don't usually spend much time online. I'd much rather do it in person. But yeah. I think Christians do need to represent. Yeah. Bo, accepting abortion is a slow walk into the twilight, ending in the deep darkness. Yeah, I mean, as far as the culture goes, I mean, we're there for the most part. I mean, some states aren't like Texas are enacting these heartbeat laws and stuff like that. I push for abortion needs to be abolished. If it is what we say it is, if it's murder, I think it needs to be abolished and just stopped because it's a great evil. I think it's extremely offensive to God, and we're seeing some repercussions for that. But yeah, it's a walk in the deep darkness. And this I one of the quotes was it Churchill. One of the quotes I read at the very, very end. Let me see if I can pull it up really, really quickly. It's this was Humphrey. Humphrey said the moral test of government is how that government treats those who are in the dawn of life, the children, those who are in the twilight of life, the elderly, those who are in the shadows of life, the sick, the needy, and the handicapped. I mean, I couldn't say it any better than that, and then how are we treating these people? These are the people actually that society seems to be wanting to cast out. And then my question is where is the Christian? Are we living up to the call of Jesus, right? I tell you, whatever you have not done for the least of these, you've not done for me. right? So are we caring for the least of these in our culture and our society? Because we can point this picture back on us. We can point that finger back at us, right? We remove the log from our own eye so to reveal the speck in another's, right? We want to judge, but we want to judge righteously, rightly, correctly after we've wrestled with it as well. So this knife cuts a number of ways. But yeah, it's a slow walk. And how are we treating these people who are the children? Obviously not well here. Abortion is travesty, the end of life issues. I mean, now we've got euthanasia rampant, and over in your neck of the woods, Bo. I mean, this stuff is a foregone conclusion now. You can go into a doctor and say, in the Netherlands, I'm unpleased, I'm unpleasant, I am not happy, I want to die, and they'll give you a pill. At least that's what I'm reading. You can correct me, Bo, if I'm wrong there. How are we treating the sick? These people during the pandemic. What did that look like? So, anyways, let's see here. Scroll down. Lost audio. No, it's not just you. Yeah, it's me. It's not you, Stephen. It's me. The least of these sad stories. Let's see. Is that Keena? Keena Lynch. I like that name. Excuse me. It's a scientifically, it is scientifically proven that the baby in the womb is a human being. That is, they had to create the legal fiction of person to allow abortions. It is a human, but not a person. Ridiculous and sad. I agree with you. This is a great example. How do you deal with this objection, right? Well, personhood. Well, okay, how do you define personhood here? Because ultimately, the person, I think, is going to rely on what's it called? Dependency, right? If it's autonomous and if it's conscious. Well, I mean, there are many ethicists who would say a 4-week-old is neither autonomous nor conscious. So it's just 4-week-olds we can kill, right? Well, this is where the discussion is going now. I mean, this is where it's going. Or what about a baby who's born extremely premature? A baby who's born extremely premature. Just it's not a human being. It's not a person. So yeah, we get into issues like this, right? Level of dependency. Is it autonomous and is it conscious? What about a 12-year-old who gets hit by a car and is in a coma, even if it's a medically induced coma, and we know that the coma is temporary. Is that person conscious? Is that a person? Or is that just a human being devoid of personhood and now is just simply a meat suit and we can do whatever we want with that thing, that human? So yeah, good point, Keena. I love the name too. Great name, Keena. Keena Lynch. Let's see here. Audio coming in and out, brother. Yeah, I'm sorry. I know. I have to get a new mic, I think. Harmony, I'll order a new mic. Let's see here. Justice, you're all the place. Have you thought about having a program on how to engage online in various formats? Lots of skeptics, etc., online in a good place to use to practice apologetics methods. I think, to be honest with you, the stuff that we do online, like the STRU, and this is a great opportunity for me to plug that. Guys, if you haven't ever checked out STR University, you've got to. It's I think it's str.training.com or / Harmony will link it. But the way that I get there, to be honest, is I go to str.org, I go to training, STRU, or now there's an STRU just tile in the upper corner. I click that, it brings you to our online portal. It's free. You sign up. We don't solicit you with a ton of stuff. We don't ask anything of you, just to go through the material. And we have a ton of classes. We release 2 a quarter. And we've been doing it for a couple quarters now. Problem of Evil's on there. You've got tactics, like according to this question, Justice. You could watch these videos and then implement what you're learning online. You see, that's, I think, kind of what our goal is to offer training to the Christian, to you guys, so then you can bring that out into your spheres of influence, places that we can't necessarily reach. But I get what you're saying. Offer something specifically geared towards discussing things online. Online is hard. I gotta be honest. So that would definitely not be something I'd be doing. Here in Denmark, it's often here in Denmark, it's often a bigger shame to give your baby away than have an abortion. Yeah, that needs to be flipped. We need to flip that script. We need to be honoring people. I think that there's the reason why that is because when people were getting pregnant, not having an abortion, they were giving their baby away. People were placing shame on top of them for choosing to do that. How can you not keep your baby? Why would you not keep your baby? You got to keep your baby. And so we offered shame instead of entering into the suffering with the person, that the woman ultimately, and the man too, but the woman who's having to wrestle with the consequences of this, and then encourage her and let her know, yes, this is the right decision. If you don't think you can care for your child, there's options. And I'm so proud of you for your willingness to not give in to the temptation to go murder your baby. So there's a truth in this that for us to self-reflect on, to look at circumspectly and then learn from, is how do we affect this type of thing moving forward? Well, let's make sure that we're not laying shame on top of shame. And when people are trying to choose the noble thing, we encourage that and we walk with them through that. But that's a good point. The abortion, back to this point, the reason why I think is the abortion is one and done. You're gone. The evidence largely is unseen. You don't. I mean, oftentimes, up until fairly recently, women didn't even see an ultrasound before they got an abortion. They didn't even see the baby. They didn't hear the heartbeat. They didn't see that the baby has arms and legs and a nervous system. We didn't see that kind of stuff. It's unseen. It's kept private. It's kept secret from even the mother. So when you have an abortion, it's easier, we think, because the consequences of it aren't seen, whereas opposed to the mom who has the baby and puts that baby for adoption or whatever circumstances she goes through, she finds herself in. Now there's evidence of what's happened, and that can be difficult. So anyways, we should just be careful how we're walking with people. Here's another question. What's the best way? I'm going to wrap up in a couple minutes, guys, because I'm actually doing an interview with Beckett Cook right after this that I think is going to get released tomorrow. We'll see. What's the best way for us as Christians to deal with abortion when the person who's having an abortion was raped? Yeah. What would be the best way for Christians to support that person? Let that person know that they're loved unconditionally. Let them know that they've done nothing wrong. Let them know that it's just awful. You cry with the person, you grieve with them, you help bear their burdens if you can. You get weak, and that's where we find strength. That's what Paul says. Well, that's what Jesus says. But it's also, we got to make it clear that we don't punish an innocent party for the crimes of another. Rape is a disgusting, deplorable evil. It's gross. To violate somebody in that way is without excuse. And there's a reason why rapists in prison don't feel well. I mean, it's even looked down upon again by the dredges of our society. But we don't punish innocent people for the crimes of others. And we have to let compassion move us into this conversation. But taking the life of that innocent human being is not the answer. It's also, studies have shown, I can't remember off the top of my mind the book. There's been a book written on it that I read years ago. It's really good. A short book, more like a pamphlet, about the effects of women who have been raped and gotten pregnant. And it compares the women who have gone through with abortions and then women who have not. And then it delineates between those who gave up for adoption, those who, whatever the circumstance, or kept them. And what the research showed is that a lot of healing happened, actually. It's the opposite of what we'd think. That oftentimes people say, well, then you have to look at that baby for the rest of your life. And you're like, oh, and that's going to remind you of the traumatic event, which yes, it could. Yeah, absolutely. But what the research shows is that there's actually a line of thinking that healing actually happens, and emotional healing and psychological healing happens because the victim here, the mom, the victim, is able to find a benefit, a positive thing that it came from that horrible event. But you got to go through it through into this very carefully and make it very, very clear that because the narrative right now, you heard it in the 2 articles that we went through, right? It's all about government coercion, and it's the government that's forcing us to carry these children, and we don't want to ever be like that. We don't want to have you're forced. This is coercion, and and that's just not the way that it is. But we should be thinking about these things in a thorough way, and understanding that just because there's a victim doesn't mean it's appropriate to create another victim, which would be the baby. So anyways, so that's how you move forward, right? Compassion needs to be given for the mother, but compassion also should be extended to the unborn child as well. There's one person here who's guilty, one, and that's the rapist, not the mother, not the baby. And then you offer practical support. What would it take? Ask that. What would it take for you to feel okay with not aborting your baby, for keeping your child, for giving birth to your child? What would it take? Does it take finding a good home for your child? Let me help with that. What does it take? You need a network of support because you need to finish school, or you want to keep your child, but you have goals. How can I help you attain those goals? And then you're walking with the person long term, though. So be committed. But this is what we do. This is what we do as Christians. This is how we win the battle. Let me see here. I'm gonna see if there's any other questions, and if I have like 1 or 2 stories I could tell. But let's see here. I hope that answers the question. Personhood interview. Yeah. Let's see. Focus on the family. I love Focus on the Family. Focus on the Family did an interview with a woman who had been violent. She got pregnant. Oh yeah, and then you continued this. Kina. I'm mispronouncing your name. I know I am, but I think it's a cool name. And kept the baby and said this kid was a blessing and didn't remind her of the rape. Yeah. That happens a lot, one of the things I'm going to end with this, guys. I was with my family back east. I went to Maine for my sister's wedding, and then we drove down to my hometown. I grew up in Plymouth, Massachusetts, which is like right on the water. And I was downtown, like just reminiscing with my family. I have these 4 young girls, and we're walking through, and all the pilgrims are out because they're celebrating a huge anniversary in Plymouth. This was in last October. And we're talking to the pilgrims, and they're in character. It's a lot of fun. We're having a ball. And then I'm noticing that down the street is a stroller that's like kind of out of control, and people are running after it. And I was like, oh my goodness. Well, somebody gets to it before I could even move. So somebody gets to it and staves it. And the woman is like frantic. She's like, thank you so much. Thank you. And then in the stroller, I see it's a dog. There's a dog in the stroller. And I'm like, what? It's cool. Good. Dogs are great and everything, but strollers for dogs. But that's not the point. The point is then all of a sudden I look behind this woman who's running down the hill, and turning the corner, around the corner. They're coming down kind of a side street onto the main street on the water here. Is pro-choice. They're part of a pro-choice demonstration, and they're all carrying signs and stuff like this. And so I actually had my youngest, Annette, on my shoulders. And so I start trying to engage these people as they're walking by. And I point out the fact that the hypocrisy. This woman just chased that stroller down to save the life of a dog. And you all were yelling and for help and needing help. And now here you are, you turn the corner, and now you're advocating for taking the life of an innocent human being. How do you justify that? Where's your thought process? And it was really interesting hearing what people say. Number one, nobody stopped to talk with me, which is really what I want. I have my daughter on my shoulders, I have my family with me. And it was really interesting what happened. People were walking by offering objections. And because I've become equipped through like Stand to Reason, the stuff that we produce, but other stuff like Life Training Institute with Scott Klusendorf, Megan Ullman, she does amazing work. I've trained myself and I've become equipped to be able to answer these objections. Well, oftentimes it's emotional to the objections. Well, I'm pregnant, but like, and I understand, but like, are you going to take that child? My answer is absolutely. My wife and I are completely equipped and prepared right now. If I am put in that situation, I have total permission I will take your baby. If it's between you killing your baby or me taking your baby, adopting your baby, I will adopt your baby every day of the week. Absolutely. And it's funny when people raise the objection, you offer that answer, and I'm in complete earnest. I mean, there's like the sting of the objection is completely removed. And one person said, life doesn't start at conception, it starts at first breath. That's actually what somebody said to me once, and we addressed this at the reality conference. I was like, well, where'd you get that? And then somebody will argue as they're walking by, it says in the Bible that God breathed life into Adam. And well, yeah, I mean, he breathed life into Adam, a specific individual in a specific place in a specific time, one-time event. That's what God did. Modern embryology and science tell us that no, life starts at conception. So you're on the wrong side of science here. One person like argued that, Jesus never talked about, it doesn't talk about it in the Bible. And anyways, I was able to have all these conversations with people because I become equipped. And I think that's what we're trying to do at STR, which is why I'd love it if you guys would visit our website, if you look at the blogs, if you just interact with us in that way. There's some fantastic resources out there. So with that, guys, I am Kina. It's pronounced Kina. Kina, thank you for that correction, Kina. And thanks for your comments. Sorry. Anyways, with that, guys, I think I have another STR University in 2 weeks. It's actually, I think, going to be a pre-recorded video, though, because I am going to be in Missouri. If things change, you'll just stay attached to our social media platforms, and you'll be able to hear the updates. And with that, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really appreciate your comments and you sticking with us, and I'll see you on the next To the Point. I'm Jon Noyes for Stand the Reason. Have a great day. Bye-bye.